Christ. Many of you might know that I teach online in Concordia, St. Paul's, Minnesota, my alma mater. And one of the things I enjoy doing as far as teaching this online class is that it enables me to stay kind of grounded on what's going on out there. Many of the students at Concordia St. Paul don't go to that school for religious reasons. They go for secular degrees. But because it is a religious institution, they are required, if they wish to graduate to be certified, to take a class in some type of religious studies. And so, my class is usually filled with a number of people who've never walked inside a church in their life. And if they had, it's been many, many years ago. One of the assignments this class asked for the student to do is to attend a church, to describe its environment, how things are done, how the building looks, and how that impacts them. How they walk away from their experience. So I'm always really curious to read the papers that come from the people that haven't stepped inside a church for years. And of course, I was intrigued by one of them this past week. It was written by a student who said that she was looking for a church and she was driving around a little bit and decided that the church she needed to go to was something that would, attract her just by the building. She found this church that was built like a community center. When she walked into the community center, she was welcomed nicely. She heard the vision statement from the greeters as they walked in, get an idea of what this church was all about. And she basically also said in summary that the whole design of the building helped me to feel comfortable. And I thought about that. I invite you to think with me today as we look at this gospel reading from Luke chapter 5 about the focus on comfortability. Many churches are pushing the comfortability where they are being built like community centers and shopping malls, so that therefore people are not so afraid to enter them because they enter them usually into everyday life. They go to a mall once or twice a week, go to a community center for meetings, so maybe having a church look like that may not be so intimidating. They also encourage pastors and clergy to stop wearing the clericals. Clericals and albs and stoles. Get rid of them. Because they have a tendency to make people feel uncomfortable. So the question I ask and want you to think with me this morning is, should the focus and direction of the church be focused on this comfortability factor when you want to talk about the presence of the Holy God? Or should we maybe have an approach in our ministry to the world that portrays a God like C.S. Lewis does in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? You might remember the conversation that took place there. Mr. Beaver is talking to Lucy as how Aslan is going to come and save Narnia from all its problems. And Lucy says, well, is he a man? And Mr. Beaver says, no, he's a lion. And Lucy says, well, I thought he was a man. I'm not comfortable meeting a lion. Is he safe? Mr. Beaver says, who said anything about being safe? He's good, I tell you, and he's the king. So you've got these two opposing philosophies in our world of how the church should be portraying the God who comes to visit man, who comes to meet us up close and personal. When you look at the scriptures, we heard about it today from the prophet Isaiah, right? Isaiah had a very up close and personal meeting with God. What was his experience? Was his experience a sense of comfortability? Did he not say, woe is me? I'm a man of unclean lips, And I dwell among people of unclean lips. Ezekiel, Daniel, go through the whole Bible. When that glory of God comes up close and personal, people are on their knees, trembling, fearful. For what makes God unsafe? It's not his goodness. It's not his authority. What makes him unsafe is his holiness and our sinfulness. I like to kind of picture it this way. Sinful man cannot dwell in the presence of the full holiness of God, like paper cannot dwell in the presence of fire. Paper will be consumed. So God therefore must clothe himself, so we do not experience this fullness of glory until the fullness of our sin is removed in heaven. But yet, we're not there. We still have our sin. And the presence of God's glory should drive us to our knees. Look at the gospel reading today. Perfect example. Peter. When Jesus is out there preaching, Lake of Gennesaret, crowds are swarming around him to the point that he has no room. So he needs to find a way to create some space between him and his hearers. And he sees two boats out there. And he knows the owners of both boats because they've taken some journeys with him. And in fact, they probably went to that wedding at Cana, saw Jesus turn that water into wine. We also hear from Luke before this event that Jesus visited Peter's mother-in-law and healed her from a great fever. We heard about that last week. So Jesus was well acquainted with these fishermen who owned these boats. And they were away from them because they were mending their nets from a frustrating night of having no fish from their journey out in the evening. So what were they going to do with the boats? Jesus commandeers the boat of Simon, goes out and preaches. And when the preaching was all done, it was time to pay for boat rental. And so he says to Peter, since you let me use your boat, I'm going to do you a favor. Go out into the deep and let down your nets. And Peter's like, seriously, you expect me to listen to a carpenter? How good of a fisherman are you? If you were a good fisherman, you know fish aren't found out there. And you know fish like this are not caught in the middle of the day. What are you thinking? We labored all night and come up empty. We're not going to have any different results with this odd fishing style. But Peter probably reflects, yes, the guy changed water to wine. Yes, he healed my mother. So, okay, I'll humor him. I will patronize him. Master will go out and let down our nets, expecting nothing to happen. And then something does. Beyond what Peter could even expect. Fish, so many that they were breaking nets, eating extra boats, the point that both of them were seeking as they were brought to their shore. Now this up close and personal experience with Peter had what type of effect on him? He fell at the knees of Jesus, trembling, because he just got a glimpse of the glory of God in this miracle. Yes, he saw the glories of God at Cana, and he saw the glory of God in the healing of his mother-in-law. But this time, this was up close and personal. This was something that was affecting him and his arrogance to think he knew better than Jesus. And he says, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man." And the Greek word says that they were feared and trembling, not just amazed at what they had just witnessed. How does Jesus respond to this reaction of Peter, this uncomfortable moment in Peter's life? I love how Christ brings comfort to us in moments of uncomfortability. He says, stop being afraid. Stop shaking in your boots, Peter. It's going to be okay. He not only absolves Peter for his arrogance, his sinfulness, but he also invites Peter into his ministry. And he says, today you will be fishers of men. And now we have a different reaction from Peter. First, he's scared out of his boots because he questioned Jesus. And now we have a reaction of thankfulness and gratitude, because Luke says he left everything, and followed him. Before this, Peter had went with Jesus a couple of trips. Like I said, he went to Cana to that wedding. He saw Jesus heal his mother-in-law, but there was nothing that was happening previously before this where he was going to leave everything. But this time, this up-close personal moment, it was too much. This time, he left everything. He wasn't going back fishing anymore. He was done. Jesus became his priority. He left everything and followed him. As we look at the story of Peter and get this question of comfortability, yes, it's good that we try to make people comfortable in the church. You want to. We want to make that happen for people as they enter, because we're sinful just like they are. We want to communicate that this is a gathering of sinners. No one is better than anybody else. You're one of us. But at the same time, too, when we get into the worship experience, I think we have to also remember what Scripture has to say, that we're going to be entering the presence of a holy God. That when we get to that point of confession and absolution at the very beginning of a church, there should be a little trembling going on here. Because when that holy God shines upon our sin, we can become very afraid of condemnation. When we come to the sacrament of the altar and recognize that that holiness of God is cloaked in simple things such as bread and wine, and yet he invites us to come, what is our posture at this rail of kneeling? It is a holy, holy moment when Christ becomes up close and personal with us, and despite our sin, tells you and me, don't be afraid. I've got your sin covered. I've taken care of it through my death and resurrection. My blood has atoned for your sin. You are safe. Our Lion has authority over death, devil, and sin, and then uses that authority to make the atonement happen so he can forgive us. And we, sinners though we be, can still yet dwell in his presence, cloaked though it be, until the day we go into heaven, have our sin totally removed, where the Lion will be totally safe and reveals all of his glory. We wait for that day, but as we do, we're here, entering into his presence, receiving the great love and passion that Christ has for us in the means of grace. And as we understand and grow into this truth, as Christ gets up close and personal to us, we're going to see how ugly our sin is, but also on the flip side, we're going to see how great his love is. We're going to see how great his forgiveness is. We're going to see him extending his hand to us and saying, rise and get up off your knees. I'm inviting you into the ministry to be a witness to the story of salvation to the ends of the world. Share the story of life with all people. What has happened to you, happening for others. And as we grow in this great knowledge of the depth of our sin, but yet the depth of love and forgiveness, what do you think our reaction will be? But the same as Peter's. We will leave everything, and follow him, making him number one in our lives, and really understanding that by doing so, our lives could become together better than they were when he wasn't number one. Yes, the church proclaims a Lion in Aslan that is not necessarily safe at the time, but he's good. He's king, I tell you. In his name, amen.